Shalom, WJC family. It's great to be back with you for our weekly Torah Talk after a few weeks off. This week in Shul, we'll be reading Parshat Devarim, the first Parsha in the new book by the same name, the book of Deuteronomy, this sort of swan song of Moshe as he delivers a final message, a very long final message, to the people that he's led from Egypt to the borders of Israel, knowing, having been told by God, that he will not be able to cross into Israel. This speech, this book, encompasses his sort of last will and testament, his ethical will to the people he has led. And we're told that exactly where he's standing on the plains of Moab as he delivers this speech, and exactly when it is, we're told, after the defeats of Sihon, the king of the Amorites, and Og, the king of Bashan, who dwelt in Ashtaroth and Edrei. It might sound like extraneous details, but we're going to come back to them. Because the very first thing that Moshe seems to want the people to understand as they are readying themselves for the conquest of the promised land, to enter into the land that God promised them, is not to be afraid. In fact, Moshe says it multiple times. Be not afraid. Don't be chagrined by your enemy. Do not be broken by fear of them. Now, look, you can encourage someone not to be afraid, but you can't command them not to be afraid. Fear doesn't work that way. We know, often rationally, that there are things that we are fear that can even freeze us in our place that there's no reason, rational reason, to be frightened of, but they scare us anyway. So what does Moshe mean, don't be scared? Is that good advice? Just don't be scared. Now, be courageous. That might be a good advice. That means you're scared, but you move forward anyway. But Moshe seems to be getting at something else. And I wanted to highlight this as we are coming through the summer of a fraught couple of years and looking at a new school year ahead, a new synagogue year ahead. And how do we prepare for the path ahead? How do we make sure that we don't give in to the fear and that we live the lives we were meant to live? And I think it might come back to this reference in passing made that Moshe is making these comments after the defeat of Sihon and Og, these ancient kings. Now, why mention them? Okay, maybe it's just to say, look, we've had a couple of victories. We have no reason to think that we're not going to continue to have victories. So it could be as simple as that. But it seems no accident that Og is mentioned here. See, Og has a long and checkered history with the Jewish people. So it could be, as Becher Shur, recommends, that these conquests are mentioned just to prove that there's no reason to fear these Canaanites that are in front of us. But it could be a lot more than that, right? And Midrash Rabbah tells us a lot about Og, and tells us a lot about, has a great imagination about who this Og is and why he might be the perfect person to deliver the message that Moshe, to which Moshe is alluding. See, Og actually has lived an unusually long life. According to the Midrash, Og appears in the stories of Abraham and Sarah, has lived ever since, and is still around here hundreds of years later for the exodus from Egypt, the journey through the desert, and ultimately to be defeated in the book of Bamidbar. So why does Og get to live so long? The Midrash tells us actually it was a punishment for Og to live so long, that Og had it in for Abraham, and so God gave Og an unusually long life so he would have to witness the success of Abraham's progeny. So what is the history with Og and Abraham? Well, Og came after Abraham or his children a few times. The first time, Og hatched a terrible plot. Abraham was going about the mitzvah of hachnasat orchim, right? He was welcoming visitors. You may remember, famously, 3 travelers who turn out to be angels, and Abraham and Sarah prepare a big feast. Abraham washes their feet. Sarah prepares a big feast. And although Og is plotting against Abraham, Abraham does not stop doing the mitzvah of hospitality, of hachnasat orchim. And it is to his credit that the whole plot falls apart, because Abraham is dedicated to the mitzvah in which he is engaged. Later events go on, and Abraham threatens Isaac's life, as Abraham is about to do the mitzvah of Brit Milah, which will at least temporarily weaken him and all of his troops, who are also undergoing circumcision. And Og says, great, when they're weakened, I'll get them. And Abraham knows it, but he goes ahead with Brit Milah anyway. He goes ahead and does the mitzvah. And then lastly, later, a couple generations later, Og is going to curse Jacob. And yet, Jacob continues with the mitzvah he was doing, blessing Pharaoh. And so the act of blessing of Jacob was even more powerful than Og's curse, and deflects it, and Og's plans are spoiled. So what's the common denominator here that we should learn from Og about maybe Moses is trying to tell his people as they're about to go forward, and that we can take into our lives with us? And it seems to be that if you are engaged in a mitzvah, if you are doing the good things that God put us here to do do tikkun in the world, to help others, to bring holiness, to call out the beauty that is all around us, all of these things which the mitzvot are calling on us to do, right? When Abraham is doing hachnasat orchim, right, hospitality that's building relationships, it's taking care of weary travelers, right? When Abraham engages in Brit Milah with his son Isaac, that entering into the covenant, that special sacred relationship that's there for us when we pursue it with God. Or Jacob, our namesake, Yisrael, bringing blessing into the world, giving a blessing. All of those things are done in the face of threat, because quite frankly, the world can be a scary place. And the response, or so Moses seems to be hinting at, is not to turn tail, to stop doing the things we were meant to do, to hide, to take a safer path, but in fact, to go ahead and do what we were meant to do, to bring the blessing, to make those relational connections, to dedicate ourselves and our lives to God or holiness or something bigger than ourselves. Ultimately, when we do those things, when we know our course and have our path, even when there are frightful things around us, we never need to question the direction that we need to go. We never need to ask, what's the right path? Should I step forward? Because the path is obvious. It's the path of holiness, the path of beauty, the path of sacredness, the path of tikkun for the world, the path of raising up others in need. That's why we're here. It is the things that frighten us that we are here to overcome. May we all have great strength in that journey. May we all defeat all of our King Ogs as they threaten us by moving forward with the mitzvot and the things we know that are right, dedication to our family, our community, to this world, and to each other. And with that, I wish you a Shabbat Shalom.